He hadn't heard his son's voice in 2 years. Not a word. Not even a sound. Then one afternoon, he came home early and found his little boy on the floor, smiling, holding a toy stethoscope, pressed to the chest of a woman he barely knew. And then the boy whispered something that broke him completely. "You're okay, Mummy." The woman was just the housekeeper. No training, no therapy, no reason this moment should have happened. But in that quiet living room, something sacred took place. And Anthony Scott, a man who built billion-dollar systems to solve the world's problems, stood frozen, watching his son speak for the first time to a stranger. He didn't hire her to heal anyone. He just needed the house cleaned. Someone to mop the floors, do the laundry, keep things quiet. After losing his wife, Anthony didn't care much who came through the door anymore. He was tired. Tired of interviews. Tired of hoping. Tired of watching his son slip further away. Adrian had been diagnosed with nonverbal autism right after the funeral. He stopped talking. He stopped looking people in the eyes. Stopped playing. Stopped everything. Touch scared him. Noise made him panic. Meals were a battle. Sleep never came easy. Anthony had tried it all. Therapists, specialists, custom programs. 7 housekeepers in 1 month gone. Nothing worked. And honestly, he didn't expect anything different from this one. Regina Wilson. She showed up quiet, kept her head down, and didn't ask many questions. He barely remembered the interview. He just told her where the cleaning supplies were and left. He didn't know her story. He didn't care. But God did. And what happened in that house, what he saw with his own eyes that day, wasn't an accident. It was grace, in the form of a woman no one saw coming. If you've ever asked God for a sign, and waited, and nothing happened, I want you to stay with this story, because sometimes the breakthrough doesn't look like a miracle. It looks like a quiet woman, folding laundry in the hallway, while a father stands in the doorway, weeping. If this story speaks to something inside you, subscribe, like this video, and tell us where you're watching from. Not just your city, but the place you're standing in right now, emotionally, spiritually, because this story isn't just about a boy who found his voice. It's about the God who never stopped listening. Anthony used to be the kind of man who had answers. People brought him problems, he solved them, quickly, efficiently, without emotion. But there's no manual for what to do when your child stops speaking. He remembered the last word his son ever said. It was, "Mama." Said it once, quiet, right after the ambulance drove away. After that, nothing. It had been 2 years. No words. No eye contact. No reaction when Anthony walked into the room. Adrian was 6 now, but in some ways, he still looked like that same little boy who stood frozen by the kitchen doorway the morning Julia died. Anthony still saw it sometimes. The way Adrian watched the floor, how his fingers curled tight when someone turned on the sink, how he covered his ears when the wind picked up outside. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, like the whole house was holding its breath. Anthony tried everything. Therapists flew in, specialists called in, teams assembled. Each one walked through the front door full of plans, left exhausted, defeated, and quiet. 7 maids had come and gone. Some left in tears. One quit after just 3 hours. None of them could handle it. Not the mess, not the child, not the grief that lived in the walls. Anthony stopped asking their names after a while. Stopped giving instructions. Just told the agency, "Send someone who can do the work. That's it." And then one morning, she showed up. Regina Wilson. She didn't knock like the others. Didn't have a clipboard or a nervous smile. The cook let her in through the side. She wore a plain shirt, pulled her hair back. Carried her own supplies. Didn't ask where the mop was. Didn't ask about the boy. She just got to work. Anthony noticed her once that first day, quietly wiping down the fridge, humming something he didn't recognize. Gospel, maybe. Soft, low, barely there. He didn't speak to her. Didn't need to. She wasn't here to talk. She didn't move fast. but she was steady. Every room she finished felt calmer somehow. Less sharp, less empty. Adrian didn't react to her, but he didn't run from her either, and that was something. The first time Anthony saw his son near her, it caught him off guard. He came down the stairs one morning and saw Adrian standing in the hallway, not hiding, not crying, just standing there, watching her dust a bookshelf. Regina didn't turn around. She didn't speak. She kept moving, slow and quiet, like she didn't even know he was there. Anthony stood still, afraid to breathe too loud. Adrian just watched. Then, after a minute, walked away. No screaming, no panic. Just walked away. It was the smallest thing, but Anthony felt something shift in his chest. He didn't say anything to Regina about it. He wasn't ready to believe it meant something. But he noticed that afternoon. She left a small stuffed monkey near Adrian's corner by the window. Didn't ask, didn't explain, just placed it gently on the carpet. Anthony didn't touch it. But the next morning, when he passed by on the way to his office, it was gone, and Adrian was sitting by the window, holding it. The house didn't change overnight. Adrian didn't suddenly talk or laugh or jump into anyone's arms. But the rooms didn't feel as cold. The air didn't feel so stuck. And for the first time in a long time, Anthony didn't feel like he was the only one, trying. He never asked Regina about her past, didn't ask why she came, didn't even know where she lived. She came in the morning, she left in the evening. No questions, no drama, no sound. Just that same quiet presence, and the sound of a child slowly turning toward the world again. Anthony still couldn't name what was happening. Didn't know if it was real or if it would last. But deep down, something whispered to him. Don't move too fast. Don't speak too soon. Just watch. Because maybe, just maybe, something holy was beginning. No one told Adrian a new housekeeper was coming. Anthony didn't think it mattered. He barely spoke to her himself. The agency had sent her name and a start date. That was it. No long resume. No smiling profile photo. Just Regina Wilson, 28, quiet, reliable. That morning, she showed up 10 minutes early. The cook let her in. Anthony didn't go to the door. He stayed in his home office, drinking coffee that had gone cold. He wasn't expecting much. Every new staff member came in with the same pattern. Nervous the first day, hopeful the second, overwhelmed by the third, gone by the fifth. So when Regina walked in quietly, took off her jacket, and asked for a broom, he barely looked up. She didn't ask about Adrian, didn't ask for a tour, just asked where the mop was and what time dinner usually wrapped up. There was something still about her. Not stiff, not cold, just still. She moved like someone who had learned not to take up too much space. Not out of fear, but because it was safer that way. She didn't wear perfume. She didn't wear earbuds. And she didn't speak unless spoken to. The first day, she cleaned the kitchen with slow, quiet motions, like someone wiping down more than just surfaces. She hummed once, soft and low, while rinsing a pan. Anthony couldn't place the tune. It wasn't modern. It wasn't loud. It sounded like something from childhood, something handed down. Adrian didn't react to her that day, but she noticed him. She didn't stare. She didn't crouch down or call his name like the others did. She just let him be. He passed by once while she was wiping the baseboards. She kept working, didn't look up, didn't try to connect. But she noticed him watching her from behind the curtain. That night, after Regina left, Anthony found something unusual. A small stuffed monkey, old, worn, and missing an ear, was sitting near the spot where Adrian always sat by the window. That toy had been boxed away months ago. No one had touched it since. He didn't ask the staff about it. He didn't say anything the next morning. But by the time Regina returned, the monkey was in Adrian's lap. She didn't say a word about it. She just smiled, very softly, and went back to folding laundry. Over the next few days, small things kept happening. Regina placed a fresh cup of milk in the corner of the hallway near Adrian's usual spot. Nobody told her he liked it warm. Nobody told her he never drank it. But the next morning, The cup was empty. She didn't ask about it. She didn't celebrate. She just left another one the next day. And the next. Anthony began noticing how quiet the house felt. Not empty, just less tense. Staff didn't walk on eggshells. There were fewer slamming doors, fewer whispered apologies. He didn't want to say it out loud, not even to himself, but it was easier to breathe when Regina was there. Not because she fixed anything, not because she made grand gestures, but because she didn't try to be anything but present. She didn't avoid Adrian. She didn't chase him either. She just noticed, like the way his fingers twitched when certain fabrics brushed his skin, or how he only sat near windows in the afternoon, not the morning, or how he always avoided the red crayon. She never asked Anthony about him, but she watched, and she listened, and something about that felt like grace. One evening, Anthony passed by the living room. Regina was sitting on the floor, folding clean towels into neat stacks. Adrian was a few feet away, facing the wall, rocking gently, holding his stuffed monkey. Neither of them said a word, but they were in the same room, breathing the same air, not afraid of each other. And for some reason, that image stayed with Anthony the rest of the night. He still didn't know who Regina Wilson was, where she came from, what her past looked like, but there was something about her he couldn't explain. She wasn't a therapist. She wasn't trained. She wasn't trying to prove anything. But something about the way she noticed the world made it feel less broken. And somehow, without trying, she was beginning to reach the one soul Anthony had spent 2 years failing to reach. Adrian didn't start talking. He didn't run into anyone's arms or laugh out loud. But he began showing up. That was the first sign. He started appearing in doorways. Not close, just near. Watching Regina as she worked. She never called out to him. Never tried to bring him in. She just did her tasks like usual, folding, sweeping, wiping down the tables. But she saw him. Sometimes it was just his eyes behind a curtain. Sometimes his feet just visible around a corner. And she let him stay hidden. She never made it about him. But she always kept the room quiet. Always moved a little slower when he was near. Always hummed that same soft tune like a memory carried on the edge of her breath. One afternoon, she was wiping the kitchen counter when she noticed Adrian's cup of milk hadn't been touched. She didn't throw it out. She warmed it again, poured it into a clean cup, and set it by the wall where he usually sat with his monkey. She didn't look back. Didn't wait to see what happened. She just went back to wiping crumbs from the sink. A few minutes later, she walked past again. The cup was gone, and the monkey had been placed beside it. Like a thank you. Without words. Anthony had started paying attention more, too. He never said anything, but he began lingering near the rooms where Regina worked. Not to monitor, not to intrude, just to see what she saw. One morning, he paused by the staircase and watched Adrian sitting on the floor just outside the laundry room. Regina was folding towels, quiet, focused. Adrian was near the doorway. Not inside the room, not watching her directly, but close. The boy wasn't rocking, wasn't covering his ears, wasn't crying, just sitting, still, present. Anthony hadn't seen that in months. Later that week, Regina was mopping the hallway. She paused at a spot where Adrian had been standing earlier. A red crayon was lying on the floor. She picked it up, looked at it, and placed it gently on the windowsill, away from the others. Anthony noticed. He remembered what the last therapist had said. That Adrian hated red. That it might be linked to the memory of Julia's dress that day. The color of the ambulance lights. Regina hadn't been told any of that, but she noticed. She knew. And that's when Anthony started wondering, who is this woman? One morning, Anthony came downstairs early. The house was quiet. The kind of quiet that didn't feel heavy. He walked into the living room, half expecting to be alone. But there they were. Regina sat on the carpet, folding pillowcases. Adrian was sitting just a few feet away, closer than before. He wasn't looking at her, but he wasn't turning away either. His monkey sat in his lap. He gently patted its head, then looked up just for a second and glanced toward Regina. She didn't react. She didn't smile. Didn't reach out. She just hummed, soft and steady, like a prayer no one had taught her, but she'd always known. That evening, after the staff left, Anthony stood by the kitchen window and watched the sun go down. He couldn't explain what he was feeling. It wasn't hope. Not quite. Hope had been too quiet for too long. But it was something. Something like stillness. Something like not fighting anymore. He thought of all the people who had walked through that door before Regina. All the degrees, all the promises, all the plans. None of them stayed. But this woman, who said almost nothing, who came with no credentials, was slowly rebuilding a bridge no one else had been able to touch. And she was doing it, without touching anything at all. Anthony wasn't supposed to be home that early. Meetings had been cancelled. He didn't call ahead, didn't tell anyone he was coming back. He pulled into the driveway out of habit, not intention. The house looked the same as always, still, private, untouched. But something in him felt different, like something quiet had been waiting. He stepped inside and noticed it right away. The silence wasn't sharp anymore. It was soft, warm, even. No crying, no echo. Just a hush that felt settled. For the first time in a long time, the house didn't feel like it was holding its breath. He set his keys down and walked toward the living room. That's when he saw it. Regina was lying on the floor. Not in distress, not asleep, just still. Her yellow gloves were still on. A red cleaning bucket sat a few feet away. A dish towel laid neatly across her lap. And next to her, Adrian, sitting cross-legged, his head slightly tilted, holding a plastic stethoscope in his small hands. He placed it gently against Regina's chest, watched it, then touched it again. He was calm. He was focused. Then, without looking up, Adrian whispered, "You're okay, Mommy." Anthony stopped breathing. He didn't move. Didn't blink. He just stood there, frozen in the doorway, watching something he couldn't explain. Something no therapist, no doctor, no program had ever been able to do. Adrian had spoken. After 2 years of silence, after thousands of dollars spent on treatments, after sleepless nights and unanswered prayers, his son had spoken. Not to him. Not during a session. Not in response to flashcards or routines. But here on the living room floor, to a woman he barely knew. Anthony felt everything at once. Relief. Grief. Shock. Jealousy. Yes, jealousy. Because that word, Mummy, was meant for someone else. It wasn't supposed to be hers. It wasn't supposed to come out like that, so natural, so soft, so real. It should have been said in a moment he could share. In a space he had created. Not like this. Not without him. He turned away before they could see him. His eyes burned, his chest ached. He walked back to his office like he was moving through water. And then, for the first time in over a year, Anthony Scott, a man known for never breaking, sat down behind his desk and wept. He didn't know how to feel. He didn't know what to say. He couldn't stop seeing the image. Adrian, pressing the toy stethoscope to Regina's chest, whispering the word that had been locked away since Julia's death. There was something holy about it, but also something that hurt more than anything he'd ever felt. That night, he stayed up, staring at the baby monitor screen. Adrian was asleep, curled up with the stuffed monkey. Breathing slow, peaceful. Anthony didn't sleep. His thoughts kept circling one question he couldn't shake. Why her? Why not the experts? Why not the programs, the schools, the cutting-edge therapies? Why this quiet woman who said almost nothing and never promised anything? Why did Adrian trust her? Why did he speak to her? Why, Mummy? The next morning, Regina arrived as usual. On time, calm, quiet. Anthony watched her move through the house. She didn't bring it up. She didn't act different. She just got to work. And Adrian? He followed her. Not close, not touching, but near. He carried his monkey and watched her as she folded towels. He didn't speak again. But the silence between them felt alive. Anthony wanted to ask her something. Anything. But every time he opened his mouth, the words didn't come. Because deep down, he knew. He wasn't ready to hear her answer. Not yet. It started as a simple question. Anthony was sitting at his desk. The house was quiet. Adrian was upstairs with Regina, sitting on the floor again, playing with crayons, though he still didn't touch the red one. Anthony opened his laptop and clicked through unread emails. Then he paused. He typed her name. Regina Wilson. Nothing. No job history. No photos. No records from the agency that made sense. He clicked again. Then again. Still nothing. For someone who worked this well with children, with his son, there should have been something. Credentials, references, but it was blank. That's when something old in him switched back on the man who built a billion-dollar company because he didn't believe in missing details. He buzzed his head of security. "Can you run a quiet background check? On the housekeeper?" There was a pause on the other end. "You think she's a problem, sir?" Anthony hesitated. "I don't know. Just look into it." That night, Adrian wouldn't eat unless Regina handed him the spoon. He let her sit beside him while he colored. When she stood, he followed. Anthony watched all of it from a distance. Every small moment between them felt like a conversation without words. The way Adrian would glance at her, then back at the page. The way she'd hum, and he'd lean just slightly in her direction. It wasn't just comfort. It was trust. And it hurt, somehow. Because that trust wasn't his. The next afternoon, the security file landed on his desk. Anthony stared at the envelope for a long time before opening it. He read it once, then again, and his chest tightened. Her name wasn't always Regina Wilson. She had changed it a few years ago, after leaving a hospital job out of state. She wasn't a maid. Not originally. She'd once worked as a pediatric caregiver until the child she was watching had a seizure and nearly died. The boy survived, but there had been an investigation. She wasn't found guilty, but she was let go. No one wanted to hire her after that. Rumors spread. Licenses revoked. Her record flagged, unofficially. That's when she disappeared, changed her name, took quiet jobs, no questions, no noise. The final page showed a court ruling. She'd lost custody of her younger brother after the incident. She never fought it. Anthony sat back in his chair. Everything in him wanted to stay calm, logical. But something deeper stirred. Not anger, conflict. Because it didn't make sense. That file was supposed to disqualify her, prove she wasn't who she claimed to be. But instead, it explained her. The stillness, the quiet, the gentleness that didn't come from training, but from living with a scar she'd learned to carry without showing. He could have fired her, that night. He had the reason, the paperwork. But something in him said wait. That evening, after Adrian fell asleep, Anthony stood in the kitchen as Regina wiped down the table. "I saw your file." She didn't flinch, didn't look up, just kept wiping. "The seizure, the hospital, the custody hearing." She paused, set the cloth down, then turned. No panic, no defense. "Do you want me to leave?" she asked quietly. He shook his head. Not yet. He wasn't sure what he wanted. "Why didn't you tell me?" Regina looked at him really, looked at him for the first time. Because people don't ask to hear the whole story. They just read the worst part and walk away. Anthony didn't say anything. She waited. "I didn't harm that child," she said. "It wasn't my fault, but that didn't matter. When the boy got sick, I was the one standing there, and that was enough." Her voice didn't shake, but it wasn't cold, either. It was the voice of someone who had already accepted what the world believed about her and chose to keep going anyway. "What about your brother?" Regina looked down. "He was 12, I was 19, I was all he had. But after the case, they split us. He was adopted by another family. I wasn't allowed to see him. He sent me a letter once, but I never wrote back. I didn't want him to grow up ashamed of me." Anthony stared at her. You think Adrian's going to be ashamed of you? Regina blinked. Then she said, almost in a whisper, No, I think he already sees me, for who I really am, and he stayed. She picked up the cloth again. But if you want me to go, I'll go. Anthony didn't answer, because he couldn't. Not yet. He just watched her finish wiping down the table, then quietly walk out of the room, and somewhere, in the stillness, he felt something begin to break open. But it wasn't her. It was him. It happened on a Thursday. Nothing about the day felt unusual until the doorbell rang. Most people didn't ring at this house. Staff came through the side. Deliveries were left at the gate. So when Anthony opened the front door and saw two people standing there, badges around their necks, folders in their hands, he already knew it wasn't good. We're with Child Protective Services, the woman said gently. We received a report. We need to speak with you. They sat at the dining table. Anthony tried to stay calm, tried not to show his confusion or his rising anger. The woman opened her folder. The report says a non-certified adult is acting in a caretaking capacity for your son. He didn't answer. It also mentions a prior record under another name, employment history, an unresolved case involving a child. Still, he said nothing. Is there a Regina Wilson currently living or working in this household? He nodded once. She's our housekeeper. Has she had unsupervised contact with your son? That question stuck in the air, like something too heavy to move. He looked out the window. He could see Adrian sitting in the yard, his stuffed monkey in his lap. Regina was across from him, slowly picking up leaves one by one and handing them to him without speaking. And Adrian, his son, who once screamed at wind, at color, at closeness, was reaching out, taking each one from her hand. No words, no instruction, just presence. Anthony turned back to the caseworker. She's the only one he lets near him. The woman looked down, took a few notes. I understand that, but due to the history on her record, we're going to have to open a formal inquiry. And until that's resolved, she'll need to be removed from the home, temporarily. He didn't speak. Couldn't. The man beside her closed the folder gently. We know this is hard, but this is protocol. Regina didn't cry when he told her. She didn't plead, didn't ask who called, but Anthony could see it right behind her eyes, the ache of being pulled out again, of being told her presence was too much, or not enough. She walked upstairs to gather her things. Anthony stood in the hallway, unsure of what to do with his hands. He felt helpless, small, like the floor had dropped out from under the fragile piece they'd just begun to build. Adrian was in his room when she went in to say goodbye. She didn't speak to him like a therapist. She didn't give a speech or explain what was happening. She just sat beside him on the floor, held out her palm. He placed the monkey in it, then looked at her, really looked, and the moment shattered. "Mummy," he whispered, not playfully, not pretending, but like someone naming something real. Anthony stood in the hallway, holding back tears. He heard the sound that came next, a low, heartbreaking wail from his son, the kind of cry that comes from somewhere deep, where language doesn't reach. Adrian was screaming, kicking, clawing at the walls, and Regina didn't move. She just whispered through the noise, "You're okay. I stayed. But the car was waiting outside. Regina came downstairs slowly, her bag over her shoulder. She didn't look at Anthony, not because she was angry, but because looking at him might break her. He stepped in front of the door. "I can stop this. I can fight it." Her voice was almost too soft to hear. "You can't fight what people don't want to understand. They won't see what's real. They'll only see my record." He looked at her, really looked. For the first time, not as a staff member, but as someone who had saved his son's heart. "You're not what they say you are." "Neither is he," she said, quietly. She reached into her pocket, pulled out the monkey, placed it in Anthony's hands. "Please don't let him forget I stayed." And then she left. No drama, no goodbye, just a door closing behind her. That night the house wasn't quiet. It was loud with pain. Adrian screamed for hours. Not words, Not tantrums. Just raw, empty cries that had no shape, only hurt. Anthony tried to hold him, but he was pushed away. He tried to sing, to hum what she used to hum, but Adrian covered his ears, and Anthony sat there on the floor, holding a stuffed monkey, and realizing he hadn't just lost a housekeeper, he'd lost the only person his son had ever trusted. The house felt different now. Not empty, not loud, just wrong. There was food in the fridge, dishes put away, towels folded. Everything looked fine, but nothing was. Adrian stopped sleeping through the night. He wouldn't stay in his room, wouldn't let anyone dress him, wouldn't eat unless it was one brand of crackers, broken into 4 exact pieces. He cried more, but not like before. This was deeper. Not tantrums, not fear. It was loss. A kind of pain Anthony didn't know how to reach. Every time Adrian passed the corner where Regina used to leave his milk, he paused, looked, waited. And every time, there was nothing there. Anthony tried to fill the space. He cancelled work, stayed home, sat beside Adrian when he colored, tried to hum that soft tune she always used. But it wasn't the same. The boy didn't move toward him, didn't push him away, either. He just sat in silence. Somewhere far, somewhere Anthony couldn't go. Days passed like that. Anthony kept watching the door, like maybe she'd return. No one did. Not the agency, not the staff, not the people who said they'd help. They came for the report, the questions, the removal, but not for the child they claimed to protect. One night, Anthony stood in the kitchen long after Adrian had fallen asleep on the couch. The monkey was still in his arms. The house was still, the kind of still that hurts more than noise. And he asked the question out loud, quiet, but clear. God, what am I supposed to do now? No answer. No signs. Just stillness. But something stirred in him. Not rage. Not desperation. Resolve. The next morning, he made 2 phone calls. One to his lawyer. One to the private investigator he used during corporate buyouts. I want everything, he said. I want to know what really happened to her. I want to know who lied and why. 2 days later, the first folder landed on his desk. It wasn't long, but it was heavy. Regina had been working at a children's clinic in North Carolina when the incident happened. The child had a rare seizure disorder, undiagnosed, unpredictable. Regina had followed protocol, called for help, stayed with him until the ambulance arrived. But the hospital didn't want press, didn't want questions, so they gave the family a quiet settlement and blamed the caregiver. She was let go the next day. No hearing, no defense, no second chance. Her license was quietly flagged. She was told not to speak to the media. One nurse had tried to stand up for her, wrote a letter. It was ignored. And then Anthony saw it. A voicemail buried in a phone record the investigator had recovered. It was from the clinic's administrator. If she talks, we'll bury her again. She's lucky she's walking free. Anthony sat there, stunned. All that pain, all that shame, all that silence she had carried wasn't hers to carry. He could still see her eyes the night she left, still hear her voice. They won't see what's real. But he had. He saw his son speak. He saw his son laugh. He saw something break open that no doctor, no dollar, no program had ever touched. That evening, Adrian had a meltdown, the worst one since Regina left. He screamed until his voice cracked, threw his crayons, tore a photo off the wall. Anthony held him anyway, not to fix it, just to stay. Adrian clawed at his chest, frantic, breathless. "Bring her back," he sobbed. "Mommy, please bring her back." Anthony's body broke into 100 quiet pieces. He rocked him gently, arms tight, eyes full. "I will," he whispered. "I promise you, I will." And for the first time in his life, Anthony Scott didn't care what the world said was allowed. He had seen the truth. Now he was going to fight for it. He didn't tell anyone at first. No announcements. No press. Just one quiet decision made in a corner of his office with the monkey still sitting on the shelf behind him. Anthony read the file again, not as a businessman, not as a father, but as a man who had once begged God for help and didn't recognize the answer when it came through the back door. Now he did. And he was ready. His lawyer said it wouldn't be easy. Reversing a formal CPS action required proof, documents, testimony, time. But Anthony didn't blink. Do it anyway. He handed them everything. The hospital report, the flagged voicemail, the list of therapists who had come and gone, and a video. Not a dramatic one, just a quiet clip from the baby monitor the day Anthony had come home early. Adrian, toy stethoscope. Regina, still and stiller. And that voice. "You're okay, Mummy." Word started to spread. Not on headlines, not in blogs, but between people. The nurse who had written the ignored letter years ago came forward. A former hospital volunteer. A mother from a support group. Each one had a story. Each one had seen how Regina showed up in silence and stayed when others walked away. And slowly, the picture began to change. The hearing was scheduled on a Tuesday morning. Regina showed up in a plain blue dress, hair tied back, no makeup. She sat quietly in the back until her name was called. Anthony sat beside her. Adrian stayed home with a trusted sitter, crayons, and a monkey in his lap. They asked Anthony to speak. He didn't use a script. Didn't quote statistics. Didn't try to sound impressive. He just told the truth. "My son didn't speak for 2 years, not a word. We had the best doctors, the best programs, the best people money could buy. None of them reached him. But she did. She didn't use charts or techniques. She didn't promise results. She just showed up, every day, quiet, present. And one afternoon I came home early, and I saw something I'll never forget. My son spoke. He looked at her, put a toy on her chest and said, 'You're okay, Mummy. I've built companies that have touched the world, but nothing has touched my son's heart until her. I don't care what a file says. I don't care who made a mistake years ago. I saw what was real. And what's real is that my son knows who saved him.' When he sat down, the room was silent. Regina didn't cry. But something in her eyes softened like a weight she'd been carrying quietly had finally been named out loud. By the end of the week, the inquiry was closed. Her record was cleared. The case was dismissed. And one quiet morning, without announcement or warning, Regina returned to the house. Adrian was sitting near the living room window when the door opened. He didn't look up at first, but then he heard the sound. That same soft hum, low, gentle, familiar. He turned. His eyes widened. He stood. And then he ran. Straight into her arms. Monkey pressed between them. No words. Just a moment that no one dared to interrupt. Anthony stood back. He didn't move. Didn't try to own the moment. Just watched. And in that silence, something healed. Not everything. Not overnight. But something. Regina never asked what Anthony said at the hearing. She didn't need to. And Anthony never asked what she prayed in those years of being unseen. He already knew the answer. It was in the way she folded towels. The way she left warm milk without asking. The way she let silence become safety, not shame. Later that night, Regina sat on the rug. Adrian lay beside her, coloring. Anthony sat near the edge of the couch, close, but not too close. And for the first time, the house felt like more than walls and light switches. It felt like a home. The house didn't change overnight. There were still hard days. Mornings when Adrian wouldn't eat. Nights when thunder made him crawl under the table and cover his ears. But the difference was, they weren't alone anymore. Regina came back the same way she left, quietly. No announcement. No celebration. She unpacked her things in the small room near the laundry, hung her plain clothes in the closet, washed her hands, started a load of towels, and just like that, she was home. Adrian stayed near her almost every day now. He didn't talk much, but his eyes were alive. He followed her from room to room with a crayon in one hand and his monkey in the other. Sometimes he would press the toy stethoscope to her chest, just like before. He never said the word again. But he didn't need to. They both remembered. Anthony watched it all unfold from a different place inside himself. A quieter place. He'd stopped trying to control everything. Stopped needing to know the next 5 steps. He was learning how to just sit and stay. He and Regina didn't speak about the past often. There were no long conversations. No drawn-out apologies. But there were shared looks, quiet understandings, moments when their eyes met over Adrian's head and nothing needed to be said. One afternoon, Adrian did something small. He walked into Anthony's office. Didn't knock. Didn't run. Just walked in. Stood beside the chair. Climbed up onto his lap. And stayed. Anthony didn't speak. Didn't move. He just closed his laptop. Wrapped his arms gently around his boy. And in the stillness of that moment, he realized. The silence had never been a wall. It had been a waiting room. A few months later, Anthony made a quiet decision. He used his resources to start something called the Adrian Project, a non-profit offering in-home support for children with communication disorders. No big launch. No red carpet. Just real help, offered in quiet homes like his used to be. He asked Regina to be the first director. She said no at first. "I don't want to be the face of anything," she said. "I just want to keep showing up." But he insisted. "That's exactly why you're the right person." So she agreed. On one condition. "We don't fix kids," she said. "We meet them." The house felt different now. Not because of new paint or new staff, but because there was laughter. Not loud, not wild, but real. Adrian had started to read. One word at a time. He still hated loud noises, still didn't like crowds. But he laughed when the monkey fell off the table. He painted sunrises with soft colors. He whispered, "I love you," to Regina before bed. He called her Miss G. She never corrected him. Every Friday afternoon, Adrian brought the toy stethoscope into the living room. Regina would lie back on the rug, arms by her sides, and he'd press the little plastic piece to her chest. Every time he smiled. Every time it mattered. Anthony sometimes watched from the stairs. No phone in hand. No deadlines waiting. Just his son. Breathing. Laughing. Present. There were no big endings. No final breakthroughs. Just the quiet beauty of something broken. Becoming whole in its own way. On a cool evening in early spring, Adrian crawled into Regina's lap during story time. The book slid from her hand. He looked up at her, toy monkey tucked under his arm. "You're okay," he whispered. She blinked, pressed a hand to his cheek. "So are you," she said. Anthony walked past the door just then. Paused. He didn't interrupt. Didn't speak. He just smiled. The kind of smile that holds gratitude too deep for words. Because he knew. This wasn't the house it used to be. It didn't echo with silence anymore. It didn't ache with unanswered prayers. Now, it breathed. Softly. Steadily. Together.